Welcome back to another episode of the Bear Trap on the Boomer Bust channel, a Bears podcast by a Bears fan. I'm your host, Terry, and today, are we going to talk about the Bears, mixed with a little bit of playoffs and other stuff? Yeah, it's all going to be joined in there together, but, I figured I'd take a page out of the old sports media book, and we're just going to relate everything to the Bears all the time. But anyway, do me a favor. If you already subscribed, you already click like, pause it. Go down the comment section right now, and I want you to know, do you think we're keeping Fields right now? Give me a percentage out of 100. What percentage chance do you give us of keeping Fields? Go to the comment section right now. Do it. Pause it. Go while you're listening. Whatever. All right. So anyway, I had an epiphany, right? And I'm talking about like a minute before I started recording. I had an epiphany because I was going to talk about coaching and all that. But I had an epiphany. So I've had the discussion many times about hiring head coaches and really even coordinators and other stuff. Those are two different conversations because a head coach has nothing to do with being a coordinator. If you're looking to hire a coordinator based off what someone did as a coordinator, that makes sense. Or if you're hiring a coordinator based off what they did as a position coach, that could potentially make sense. A head coach just has nothing to do with either of those jobs. Obviously, being good at it is it helps, but that's not what a head coach is. Anyway, so I've always said, the reason you see all these dumb things, besides the fact that teams are impatient, is because that's all they do. They be like, "Whoa, who's the hot coordinator name? Oh, this defense was good, so we're gonna call that defensive coordinator." You know nothing about the team. You know nothing about the team, especially because it usually starts from the owners. But that's what they do. They go for the names. Now, I did point out, and I do agree with this, that these places are always going to go for the names because of how fans act in the sports media. Now, should those two things matter as much as they do today? They should not, but they do. And so when you get, like I said, this is why I made the joke. I said by sports media rules, Mike McDaniels from the Dolphins, he doesn't know how to coach offense. Even though every other sentence about him is offensive guru, genius, blah, blah, blah. One of those things that the social media started, and then fans also run with in sports media, where they'll be like, he's supposed to be offense. He said he's a guru and he can't even do this. No one ever said that. That was y'all who said that. I said the same thing with Matt Nagy. Every single fan, he's a supposed offensive guru. He doesn't even know. He's a quarterback whisperer. No one said that but y'all. Okay, but anyway. And going for them, and I talked about McDaniels. I also said Dan Quinn, by sports media rules, he can't be the Seahawks head coach because his defense had a bad game, and he was the defensive coordinator. And I'm saying that ironically because that is how it's always treated. Now, again, Luke Getsy, an example I gave. So if we had the same year this year, but switch out Getsy for Ben Johnson, with Ben Johnson's resume, they would have been lining up to fire Fields and everybody else. But because Getsy didn't have a resume, we're going to blame Getsy, everything on Getsy, which is why you got such a strong fan base for Justin Fields. But like I said, no matter if you like Justin Fields, I guarantee, I bet my house on it, that if we had a big name coordinator here instead of Getsy, they would have been blaming Justin Fields. That's why people go after names, because you get the benefit of the doubt of the narratives. People will swing a narrative however they want to, and obviously you know it in politics, but watching football this year, for some reason, it's become crystal clear. Like, you could watch the exact same game and look at the same stats, and depending on who you like or how you feel about a person prior, you're going to swing the narrative one way until it's undeniable. Like, that's why the Cowboys is interesting, because look, context, stats, all that, I'm big for it. But when you look at a team that has a history over a decade, it's kind of hard. So anyway, there's all that. But I say all that to say, I'm like, why do we keep doing this? Why do we keep making these mistakes? And I realized, because I take it back to my level, or even NCAA. I'm like, okay, How do we get coaches? Like, of course, you say that team's doing good. How do I know who over there has the mind and the skill set to be successful in our situation? If you're not over there, even if you're an owner or an athletic director, even though you got access to a lot of stuff, you're not there to know who's the one driving the bus unless you got sources. But most times, still in the season, you don't know. So I'm thinking, how do we find good talent? How do we find the next coach? And I realized something very simple. We have open hiring for the most part. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of head hunting on the college and obviously the college, but the lower college and the high school level, there's head hunting, especially in big states and stuff like that. So having that impressive resume, people will look over anything to get you in there, of course. But particularly when it comes to position coach and coordinators, it's open hiring. I mean, yeah, you have coaches that will bring coaches they know onto their staff. That is the coaching profession. But still, it's so much turnover and there's so many candidates that you could open hire. So my thought process was, okay, let's just say the 49ers. And you say, okay, this offense is great. I think Shanahan's great. I want to hire someone from his staff. And it's like, okay, how do you know that that person is, they know what they talking about and they're really, have the skill set as a coach that you just assume they have? Obviously you don't know until it happens, but you don't get a good idea until you talk to them and interview. But then I'm like, wait a minute, like, what if they don't get to interview them? And that's when it hit me. Like, in the lower levels, again, you have an opening, people apply. You might not know this person. You might not even know the school they came from. They might not have a great resume. They might have a great resume. It doesn't matter. They sit down in front of you like everybody else, and they get to talk. Some, I would say, similar, connected to the Rooney Rule, because essentially the Rooney Rule said that you don't have to hire somebody, but y'all got to start talking to these people. And then the famous story is the Steelers wasn't thinking about Mike Tomlin, met him, was so blown away, he ended up getting the job. Rest is history. Now, obviously, the Steelers were owned by the Rooneys at that time, and they were responsible for the Rooney Rule. So obviously, they were already more open-minded. But that situation is kind of what you think. So when I think about now, where it's like the Bears they're requesting to talk to this guy. They're requesting to talk to this guy. They're requesting to talk to this guy. You are narrowing your view. You're narrowing the pool to your own view. You're just like, here's the people we think, or the teams and units we think that are good. And so they got a good unit. We want to talk to someone over there. Now, is it, hey, we want to talk to the pass game coordinator? We want to talk to the running backs coach? Not typically. Sometimes for coordinator positions. But typically, we want to talk to a coordinator. He's doing that good job. We want to talk coordinator to be our head coach. Now, for the Bears, we're looking for an OC and a DC potentially. But the same idea applies. And so that's when it finally clicked to me. It's like, I wouldn't say that's the end all be all, but you shorten the pool so much and you close yourself off to so many potentially talented coaches because you're the one deciding who to interview. And I mean, point blank, obviously in any situation you pick the people you want to interview, but there's no one applying. There's no one for you to even be surprised by. You have one thing in the process. We want you to interview. That's it. And that cuts off so much. And me as a search advocate, I'm trained to do or to be part of searches to keep things equitable and fair and to promote diverse hiring. And those are some of the most basic level red flags. It's like you are creating and curating what's it called? application pool. You're curating the application pool so that only certain people get in. In this case, it's very specific. Only certain people you're gonna talk to, and that just cuts you off from so much potential. And that just hit me. I want to talk about that because that does segue into us. And I know there's a full list out here. I haven't seen on the NFL official. I've only seen one coordinator that we requested to interview, which is the Seahawks coordinator. But I saw a list over the weekend with some other ones. I mean, and I won't say it doesn't matter, because it obviously does in terms of on the field. It doesn't matter so much though in terms of us, because again, we're not really there. And especially if you get somebody that doesn't have offensive coordinator history, because coordinators and coaches don't change a whole lot. Not a whole lot, maybe a little bit, but not a whole lot. And so if you get a guy that's had 10 years as a coordinator, you can safely say what type of offense you'll be getting pretty consistently. But still, those things are very complex, so I don't like to get into it, because unless you know them and you're there, you're not really gonna have a good understanding. But of course, the fans don't care. They will go back and say, hey, they put up these stats with this offense. Hey, they had this player, and that player is kind of similar to DJ Moore, so we should expect it. And fans gonna create narratives that come out of nowhere. But it does help to kind of see what they might be potentially looking at. I know the 49ers, I want to say, is not just us, but a team that other people are looking at. I know our first and official one is the OC for the Seahawks, which makes sense because I never, like I said, it's understandable, I should say, when you're saying, hey, we're looking at this coordinator to be our coordinator because he's been a good coordinator. That makes more sense than the head coach. But it's always weird to me when you're looking at a coach that's already a coordinator, and like Eric Bieniemy was one of the weirdest situations I've seen, and we see how that worked out. But still, that was weird just to have a lateral move. So at first thought, I was like, why would the Seahawks won't even apply? But then you remember Pete Carroll left. They get a new coach. So essentially, they're kind of all free agents technically, although there's no decision made until they get a new head coach. But they could kind of be looked at as free agents. So that makes more sense. Now, again, you can pull the narratives about quote unquote resurrecting Geno. I don't even want to say that because, again, depending on the narrative, you don't believe in Geno, so they had to resurrect Geno. There's no way that Geno could have did that himself. That's a narrative. So I don't want to say they resurrected him, but you want somebody that was a part of Geno's reemergence, playing ball control football. But the thing is, if you're hiring somebody out of Seattle's, or I should say Pete Carroll's tree, is a very distinct zone run, multiple tight end, play action type offense. And that isn't super different than what we do now. I think we mix up the run a little bit, but we don't, in my opinion, use our personnel as well as the Seahawks or other teams. In terms of, we have Cole Kmet, and we might move him around pretty decently, but we don't use the multiple tight end sets. We got a fullback, so, but even if you want to use him as an H-back and all that, we don't do a lot of that stuff. And which is, I've said before many times, I feel like our run game could be a lot more versatile. So that's a little different. But I think philosophically, the philosophy is kind of similar when you're talking about running the ball and then play action and off of that. The only thing that's different, I think, is that they do a lot more zone. They do heavy zone, outside zone stretch, inside zone, all that. But then they do a lot more insert type things with their tight ends and H-backs as well, which could be interesting. But you think of the 49ers, like I said, is one team I'm pretty sure I've heard. And it's similar. I mean, a lot of these people come off the Shanahan tree. So 49ers obviously is Shanahan Central, but then you get the Dolphins who with Mike Daniels, from Shanahan's staff, and we're talking about Big Shanahan, Dad Shanahan. He was on Big Shanahan's staff and Little Shanahan's staff. And then you got McVay that was with Big Shanahan's staff, LaFleur. So it's a lot of that going on. A lot of it is zone running. Now there's flavors to it where you'll see like the 49ers like to do a lot of formations, a lot of condensed formations. The Dolphins like to do a hell of a lot of motion and everything. Now, one of the things that I've come around in my years is that there obviously is pros and cons to everything, but the eye candy, the window dressing, like if I'm scheming for it and I'm boiling it down, like yeah, it's not that big of a discussion. But I think in terms of a general like philosophy, I think it's most definitely important these days. I wouldn't even say important, but it's helpful. So I wouldn't say it has no value. Like again, if you're the Ravens or I don't know if I say the Dolphins, but let's say you're the Ravens, you're the 49ers. We'll even throw the Dolphins in there, and you're down 17 in the fourth quarter. How much then does that help? Not a lot. Obviously, there's no magic bullet. It's about having a full arsenal. So that's one thing you can have when it's the first play of the game, and you're on offense. That's a weapon to have. Like having that eye candy, making the defense look at something different, and that's something that the Bears really have never had. And not, we're not gonna act like it's been around the league for a long time, but the Bears just never dabbled into that, even with Nagy. And with the Chiefs and how much they shift and stuff, I thought we would see more of that, but we didn't. So I think about finding a coach that can get you into some of those things does help you a bit. It gives you a bit of advantage. Now, that can't be all you do. Like we said, the Dolphins and all that, because eventually that does get nullified by time. And on top of that, you have to, if you have a team like that, you have to be disciplined because that could lead to a lot of penalties. Now, you see a lot of teams in this current year where they don't get penalized that much. It's a well-oiled machine, but that is a priority you have to take in practice. And that's what people got to realize. You got a smart football player, so you got to weigh that when you pick players. Then you got to have time and practice built into going over those things. So that's another thing you got to prioritize. So, it's pros and cons to it, especially when it's your first year. You get into a team with a brand new system where there's a lot of shifts and motions and all that. You could end up with a penalized team. So that's something to look at. I mean, for those reasons, I tend to think about if it was me, and I was simply like, okay, we're only going to pick who we want to talk to. I would say I want to talk to somebody from the Rams staff. Now, obviously, a lot of people have done that, but McVay continues to show you as a unit that, and the thing is you want to look at the results of it all. Like, what are the numbers? But really, you look at the execution, and the team's the same. It ain't different. You got, like I said, you got a lot of same philosophical concepts that they do as an offense. But then even the way they attack teams, it's the same stuff. So it's not like they switched it up a lot. So obviously the Rams had a big run this year. So people are going to be like, oh, McVay still got it. But even if they weren't having that run, or if they were looking bad like last year, you got to look at what the offense is doing. So the offense didn't change. It's still the same thing. It's same as it was last year. Obviously having the quarterback healthy helps. But anyway, so yeah, all that to say, that's probably where I'll be looking. It's funny that the Eric Bieniemy was like at a fever pitch this year. And it's died down, but you still got some people that are riding that bandwagon. And it's funny because I'm just like, once again, if we're going by the sports media fans rules, how is Eric Bieniemy the guy? His offense looked terrible this year. If we're going by y'all rules where we're just going to look, hey, how was your unit? Okay, well, you get to have a chance. Well, we going by that. Eric Bieniemy, his unit was terrible, and they weren't good statistically, and the coach got fired. So I don't understand why Eric Bieniemy is still the name. In terms of y'all rules, I'm not talking about me personally. I mean, me personally, that's not. I don't have no strong conviction. I ain't gonna say I wouldn't, but I don't have a big strong push for Eric Bieniemy because I don't really know what it is that people. I don't even say that. I don't know what it is that teams know about him that he's great at. Fans clearly don't know, and the media don't know. All they know is, oh, his unit, he was there with Mahomes, and but we gonna excuse the fact that the Commanders look bad. So anyway, there's that. We'll see what we do with the offensive coordinator and all that. But again, if they don't have, well, I assume they will have a resume this time. But if they don't, it's much like Getsy. Everybody kept talking about Getsy. See, I'll throw this in real quick. When everybody is running to find other people and their takes to you because they can't have their own thoughts, or when they're running back to look at stats, or they're running back to look at highlights, that's usually what fans do when something goes wrong with a coach or whatever. And so they're looking for that information to inform their opinion. While everybody's doing that, you know what I run to go see? I run to go see the introductory press conference. I run to go see how it was when they bring him in. And that's what another thing Warren said. Is it Kevin Warren? I forgot. But Warren said that I really appreciated his mindset. He said, when somebody introduces the coach or whatever, they always think it's going to work out. They always have high hopes. And I'm like, exactly. No one comes in to the press conference like, yeah, this isn't really what we wanted to do, and we don't think he can do it. So it's just, and some of this might be obvious to say, but I think it's something people really need to think about when they're raging on Twitter and they're trying to curse people out on social media and all that. It's like, really think about what you're saying. You acting like somebody really just was like, oh, this guy sucks, we're gonna bring him in. Now, if you got a situation, it's like, oh, turns out that's the coach's step or son-in-law, and he had no type of at all credentials for this. That's one thing. You don't see it as blatant like that in the league. But it's another when it's like someone came in and there's factors, and people are going to ignore the factors and just blame him. So whatever. But I say that to say, I think about like Getsy and all the conversation the Bears fans had. And I'm telling you, the exact same Bears fans listening now or sitting on Twitter right now that have been cursing Getsy out, cheering when he got fired, those are the exact same ones that were arguing with me about how good Getsy's system is, about how Getsy's going to do this in his system. And I'm like, look, I'm going to say I'm super connected, but I have some connections to football. And you have none. How do you know this much about Getsy and his system that I don't? How do you know more than Matt Eberflus does? I'm just confused how y'all can sit here and confidently tell me what Getsy's system is when he's had no history of calling plays or being an offensive coordinator. And sometimes it's not even, even if you told me, well, the Packers do this, I maybe would have bought that a little bit. People didn't do that. They just said, they have no explanation. I'm like, well, how do you know that? It's obvious. How is it obvious? What are you talking about? So if y'all knew so much about Getsy's system, then y'all would have been asking him to be fired from day one, according to y'all, because his system was so bad and he was the sole reason that the team was bad. So those are the things that always interest me, man. When they kicking people out and everybody was ready to boot them, I always go back to the introductory press conference. And I want to hear, because, once the bullets fly, nobody cared anymore about why they hired you. Nobody care about that optimism and hope no more. But that's why I go back to why'd you hire him? What did you say you want to do and all that? And then we can start to compare to what happened and get to the bottom of it. But that's not what people do. So anyway, all that to say is, once whoever it is to get hired, I'm gonna wait and see, because fans gonna tell you, they gonna swear they know everything on day one, but goes to show how much that actually means. So the last thing I'll talk about, I got some other stuff, but playoffs I can hit quick. But speaking of playoffs, CJ Stroud, I really, I don't think I need to talk about this too long, hopefully. Because if you know me, you know what I'm going to say. If you follow me, you know what I'm going to say. I just ask better Bears fans. If you listen to this, you enjoy, you're a better Bears fan, please stop with please do not become one of those people talking about CJ Stroud. I cannot begin to tell you how idiotic it sounds. I just can't. There are so many, and I'm darn near would probably say every single draft trope applies to this situation. And so I've talked about all the time, apples to apples, especially with quarterbacks. You can't be apples to apples. You can't just talk like you put a player in a vacuum and it spits them out and say good or no. That's not how it works. Everything's about context. So, as I said before, Pat Mahomes you see in Kansas City is not the same one in Chicago, not the same one in Buffalo, not the same one in Pittsburgh. The CJ Stroud you see this year would not have been the same one in Chicago, would have not have been the same one in Carolina, and so on and so forth. So to sit here and definitively, as radio personalities, as fans and all that, to sit here and definitively say, well, what's his name? Ryan Poles missed CJ Stroud. Like, what are you talking about? Now, CJ Stroud is the second pick. A little different. So you can only definitively say, I wouldn't say definitive, but you can only objectively say the Bears and the Panthers passed on him. But we don't know where he would have ended up. And even though he went number 2, again, well, never mind, I take that back. Because, well, no. Technically, the Panthers could have traded the pick to whoever they wanted to. Now, obviously, after what they gave up, they probably weren't going to do that. They decided what they was going to do with the pick. But, if we want to be technical, anybody could have made a play if they felt that strongly about Stroud. And so, similar to Mahomes, where when people say the Bears are the team that passed on Mahomes, makes my head want to split, crack open. What are you talking about? Do you know how many teams passed on Mahomes? And I heard someone say this, we're the team that passed on Lamar. What? We're one of the teams. Just like I said, somebody was talking about Dak Prescott. I don't remember if that was a conversation or if I said that on here. But somebody on the radio was talking about Dak Prescott and how we didn't take him. We had 3 picks in that 4th round, didn't take him. And so that's a strike against us. What are you talking about? By that logic, it's a strike against 31 teams every single time somebody get drafted, unless they get drafted number 1. That is the dumbest line of thinking I've ever heard. So besides all that, you got the development part with CJ Stroud and everything. For my money, I like Stroud. So, and I like Bryce better. And I would say 10 times out of 10, when you do that evaluation again, it's going to come out the same way. Like, you might have some people that felt Stroud was a little bit better. Typically, you have people who refuse to believe in quarterbacks that are certain statures. And so you take CJ because he's a little bit built more prototypical. Fine, whatever. But and I'm not saying it was light years away, but I'm not going to pretend, and anybody that would try to pretend in the scouting community, I would call him out. I'm not going to pretend we all have Bryce over him. And to act like that the discussion is over with as of right now is insane. Like, the season's not, I mean, the season's over for Bryce, season's not over for CJ, but the whole season ain't even over. And even if it was, so what? It's first season. What do you, these dudes is 20 some years old. And so there's a number of examples you could pull out. Now, I'm not saying CJ Stroud is the same or plays the same as these guys, but there's a number of different examples of a quarterback coming in, playing extremely well, either his rookie year or within his first 3 years or whatever, or having a great first year, plummeting in the second year, maybe being okay the third year, then falling off. There's so many examples of it. So to sit here and act like the story is written is crazy. I mean, because again, that is the mentality that football's played in a vacuum. He can do these things, so it doesn't matter, it's going to go well. No. If things change around him, if people aren't picking up their slack, the results are going to change. That's how a team sport works. So I'm not going to sit here and act like it's all written in stone already. And the other part is CJ can be great and Bryce can be great. They both could be very good. They can both be horrible. One could be great, one could be horrible. People act like it's an automatic, well, CJ's this good, so Bryce must suck. Like, no. If the Panthers are getting a new coach, obviously, but if they change things around, the roster gets changed, like in 3-4 years, he starts to rise, like, that's what it is. Like, trying to call stuff so early in this microwave generation is just, it's so stupid. So anyway, don't be one of those people. CJ Stroud has answered some questions, and it's not, I won't even say answer questions. I think, well, I would say he answered one question, because that's the hard part when it comes to these top tier schools, is you don't know how they'll react when the bullets are constantly flying. Because at Ohio State, the bullets are rarely flying. At Alabama, Georgia, places like that, places where you got all the top line prospects, the bullets are rarely flying. And I've said, I don't even remember, what was the first 4 weeks? I said underrated is the Texans O-line. I said people aren't talking about how good they're playing. And that was when Tunsil was out. And then Tunsil came back and, they continue to be. I'm like, Stroud hasn't had a clean pocket every snap, but rarely what I've ever seen in the times I watched was him having immediate pressure. And there's not many quarterbacks that can do anything about that, so I'm not saying, that's against him, but I haven't seen that. And so that's kudos to the O-line. But obviously this ain't Ohio State, so he faced more pressures. He's had to make more throws and rhythm in the pocket than he's had to in Ohio State, and he answered that question. Now, some of the things that he's doing, the casual person's going to be like, well, you missed that on tape, you were wrong. No, it's called players get better. And that's what I talked about, because Ryan Post had mentioned during the press conference when they was asking about whose fault it was, the offensive coordinator or the offensive staff or the quarterback. And he said there's things that on both sides could have done to be better and work to get better. And the first thing I thought of when I heard this conversation with Stroud too is that's what I was saying. And it is weird, and I hesitate so much to say it because I'm talking out of the dark. I have no idea what Justin Fields does in the offseason. But what I'm saying is, from players that I know have done drastic things in the offseason and how they looked on the field, just looking at Fields, it doesn't seem like he's done those things. And I don't know. And again, that's questioning him. But you got a lot of players that play great and don't feel like they need to do much in the offseason. And there's some that are working all the time, and I don't even know if it's that. Like, you go back to Josh Allen, and he is what he is, but still, he put in that time early in his career to do something that's I don't even know if it's expensive, but something that costs money and time, but something that wasn't even really a known thing, and that's work with a golf guy to reform his throwing motion. And every year you got new technology and new experts and all types of things to try, but he's out there trying something. And, trying to rebuild his footwork and all those different things. And there's so many other things you can do. And so, to me personally, I feel like when it comes to quarterbacks and receivers, you can see who's putting in work. You can see, that doesn't mean you're not doing anything off season, but you can see who's rebuilding something. Like, to play well, that's a number of things. Like, obviously you got the skill. That's you having IQ, knowing the situation. That's your team doing their job. Like, you could play well. That don't mean you was rebuilding anything. You could just be playing well, doing the stuff you've always done. But to see a player change, I feel like that's always noticeable. And I haven't seen Justin Fields change. Now, again, maybe he's done all these. Maybe he went up to the mountains with Dr. Strange to try and improve, and it just didn't work. I don't know. So that's why I don't like to say it. But watch him on the field, just doesn't look like he's changed anything. And so that's part of CJ Stroud too. So it's like people want to say, oh, you were wrong, you missed this. It's not necessarily always the case. Players go out in 2024, they're able to go out and really find groundbreaking things to invest in their body. So anyway, that's that with CJ Stroud. So I picked the Texans. I just like them as a home team. The one thing I said about the Browns, not saying they're a bad defense. See, people try to do this, that 0-100 stuff. I said they were overrated. Oh, you a hater? You said they bad? I didn't say they're bad. I literally mean they are overrated. You're ranking them too high because, number one, people gave them all the accolades because of the numbers. Oh, historic. And I said before, you can point to two early games. The first game of the season against the Bengals, and then against the 49ers. Darn near monsoons. Just complete nasty weather. So you had two games in which you had absolutely irregular first down stats, passing yards, scoring, all that. And that skewed their numbers for most of the year. Now, once you get to the end of the year, they're second or third in some categories, still first in some. But it took darn near the whole year to get it corrected back to the mean. So what that tells me is, yes, you're still a really good defense. You're a top 10, top 5 defense potentially. But that doesn't mean you're by far and away the number one defense. And so that's what the numbers would probably tell you if you're looking at the whole season. But people weren't trying to hear that. And so I'm like, look, they can be good. They can be really good. But you hold them up as this is a historic defense. No, just because you look at the numbers but anyway, so that's how they tried to tout them. Now, what they are, you got Jim Schwartz, and it's known what he does. You got an aggressively blitzing team with two corners. They got sticky man coverage. And obviously, again, you got to be coached well. You got to know where you're supposed to be at. And then you got Myles Garrett, and I would say the best edge defender. And then you got Zadarius they added this year, and I talked again about having that second guy on the edge and collapsing the pocket. So you got an aggressive blitzing team, well coached, secondary, Delpet, and a lot of those guys had to know where they were going to be. And they were good at that. But and it's very similar to the Ravens. But at the same time, what you have to understand with that type of defense is if you miss or you don't get immediate pressure, you're leaving a lot of stuff wide open. And credit to the Texans, like they've done much of the year, they're very smart with their protections, knowing where to be, and they did their job to pick those things up. Again, of course, you got Tunsil. Now, Garrett didn't go against Tunsil all game, not even most of the game. So it wasn't just Tunsil. Like people like say, oh yeah, Tunsil did. I hate when you reduce anything in football to that. But obviously that other tackle had to hold his own, and they've been doing that pretty well this whole year. One team that I haven't watched a lot is the Green Bay Packers. And I think similarly, you gotta, people gonna talk about Love. They're gonna even talk about the receivers somewhat, but no one's talking about how well they've been protecting this man, and especially for a team without their starters. So you got to give credit to that. The Browns, I didn't necessarily think were bad. Of course, like I said, very good defense, great defense if you want me to say that, but they could be got. And they got. So because the running game picked up later, but early on, they weren't really hitting them with crazy runs to like slow the blitz down or anything. It was just the offensive pass game as a whole really executing. And if you look, I think Stroud threw it 21, 22 times, something like that. It wasn't like he threw a whole lot. So he had time to make big plays down the field, man. But credit to them. And then of course Flacco, which I believe is capable. But overall, I'm just not taking the team on the road with like their fourth quarterback. I just wasn't. I think that was disrespectful to the Texans. So wasn't shocked by that. The Chiefs, I thought like everybody else, I didn't think the Dolphins would be able to adjust to the weather. And yeah, they really didn't. And then what was the team? Oh, so the Cowboys. So, and of course, I stand on my pick. This is what I put out. This is why you got to stand on it. You got to stand on business. But, whether you believe me or not, it doesn't matter. I 100% wanted to pick the Packers. My bets will tell you I definitely did pick the Packers to keep it close, because I just did not feel Dallas was going to blow them out. Now, I didn't think the Packers were going to blow them out, but I've said all year the Dallas defense is not what everybody's been saying. That's the story all year. It's just everybody hyping up defenses. I don't understand, like, when you had the 2000 Ravens or whatever, obviously they weren't saying, oh, we the 2000 Ravens. When you had the Bears, our stints, the 85 Bears, or our Bears that went to the Super Bowl back in 05, or was it 05? No, it was like 7. But we weren't going around calling ourselves that because we didn't do anything yet. It's these teams that now they come out in the off season talking about we're the such and such. Like, how are you comparing yourself to? You didn't even do anything. Those are names you get. People reference your name, the 23, the 23 Cowboys defense or the 23 49ers. They do that after you've done something. So anyway, a lot of hype. I didn't believe in them, even with Diggs. Not to be elite, that's crazy. And then it's funny, we saw the same thing last year just get repeated this year. Dallas so great. Oh, maybe they're not good at stopping the run. Same thing this year. Dallas so great. Oh, maybe they're not that good at stopping the run. And then you get into the playoffs, and there you go. I thought the Packers, what they did offensively, I wouldn't say standard, but it was pretty much to the T. You came out, you tested the ability, and everybody says like the Cowboys, you hit them in the mouth. No, you don't. I don't know why people keep saying that. Pretty much all the teams that have ran roughshod on them are killing them on zone. Because you say, well, these guys are smaller, quicker, so you just run right at them and maul them over. Yeah, that sounds good, but that's not what's happening on film. On film, because they're smaller and quicker and cover ground, they're triggering fast, flying downhill, and they're getting killed on the cutbacks. So whoever's on the cutback, yeah, they are smaller. They're going to get washed out pretty easy, or they're going to run themselves out of the play. And much like I was talking about the Bears earlier this year, like we were super aggressive, which is good. But we were too aggressive and we were getting killed on counters and stuff for that misdirection. And so I think that's more so what the Packers were able to do. But yeah, you attack them with the run. As soon as they start breaking, now you got them in a two-way situation where you could play action off that, go for a big play. You could also take your shots, and you could also do something to the perimeter, and they didn't really know what to do with it. And I think that's what you were supposed to do. Now, the offensive line, like I said, they did their job. They've been giving Jordan Love time. And I said Jordan Love after the first week, everyone was going crazy again, trying to get flowers. Let's see what he does when he doesn't have all day to throw. Then he started getting into some games, started looking different. Everybody threw him on the bus. Matt LaFleur don't know how to coach, all that good stuff. Then you get into this game. Good playing on offense. They kept him protected. And I wouldn't say all day to throw, but he had a lot of time to throw, and he was able to just eat it up. So I think the offense was on schedule. The impressive part was the defense. Maybe the not so impressive part by Dak. I don't know. I mean, I watched it. I would have to watch it again and like really look at it through that lens. But obviously the defense made plays that they had to make. But I do tend to think that I would probably put it more 60% on Dak versus the defense just killing everything. I think Dak did make some mistakes, but the biggest thing to me is that the run game for Dallas just faded. It's become so complimentary, and the decision to let Zeke go, I'm not mad about that like people are. What I am mad about is that you don't go out and get nobody. You don't draft nobody. You don't try to get Derrick Henry, even if you think his money's too much, he's too old. Fine, go out for Josh Jacobs. Saquon was out there. Like, there was so many options, and like I talked about before, running backs are a dime a dozen. You know what type of guy Pollard is now. You thought Pollard was going to be some all-star, do-it-all running back, and that's just not the case. Even if he has an effective game, yards per carry, whatever, he's still not the same physical dominance that another running back would be. So it confused me early on in the season when Dallas never made a move for a running back, and they just continue to let Pollard be kind of subpar, or at least a rushing attack, I should say. And they never addressed that. So now you down. Now you're not getting wide open stuff to CD Lamb. Now you got to actually play ball. And I just don't think they did a good job of running the ball. And I don't think Dak did a good job when the pressure was on him. So there was that. I think, was that all the games? Oh, no, the Detroit Rams game. That was a shootout just like I thought. I thought it could have been more interesting. It was sad that was the wild card because I would have loved for that to be the NFC Championship. I just didn't want that game to end. But I took Detroit because the home factor matters. I think both defenses are suspect and could get got, and they did. I thought Stafford can deal more than Goff, but I thought both offenses could deal, and they did. Yeah, I really do think it came down to certain calls in the game that were missed and different things like that. I think that was one of the differences. But those teams went toe to toe. I mean, I don't think you could really look at either team as coming out of there as a loser. I mean, in terms of how they played. So there's that. And then today, actually, I think I forgot to put it up, but I'm taking Buffalo, even though I took Buffalo, I should say, because the game just ended. But I took Buffalo. I thought the weather was going to be worse, but I would have took Buffalo either way. I don't believe in Mason Rudolph. And then I'm taking the Bucks. So I'm saying that before that game starts. but those were the two I was going to take. Mainly because the Eagles, I honestly think the Eagles, despite whatever the downfall is, people calling it, I would have took the Eagles had they been healthy. But the fact that Jalen's fingers banged up, the fact that AJ Brown is out and possibly he would have played with a knee injury, and all those other different injuries, I just wasn't going to take them because I think they're so much more talented than the Bucks that if they were healthy, they still would have made a way to win. Not saying it would have been a blowout, but I think they would have made a way to win. But with the injuries, I just don't give them a lot of chance. So, yeah, that's what I'm going with. But one thing I realized, trying to every 4 weeks or so recap the NFL and give my thoughts, obviously tracking the certain stats I track. One thing I take away from this year, which was the same takeaway last year, these teams are who they are. Like, people want to talk about firing a coach, which, hey, in the Raiders case, that was a good call. Is it toxic? Not because they won, but because Josh Daniels was toxic to the point they really hated that man. And as I said with Urban Meyer, any other time before that, I'm not for firing coaches midseason unless it's a toxic situation where they need to go. Turns out, and I did an episode, turns out that the Raiders locker room was worse than we knew. And so obviously people hate him because of the Patriots. They hate him because he tried to cheat. They hate him for all types of reasons. Anybody's going to jump on McDaniels. But until I actually heard that the locker room actively hated him and he made it uncomfortable, it wasn't until then that I was going to agree. So there we are with that. But other than that, these teams are who they really are. I mean, even the Raiders, yeah, they won some games. They are who they are. And so, as I say a lot of times, one of the reasons I say the head coach thing is silly is because all this gets built in the offseason. All of this gets built in the offseason. And so, yeah. All right, so that's it for me. Go down comment section. Let me know what you think. Share it around, get the conversation started. Thumbs up, subscribe, and remember, stay up and bear down.